Welcome back. Time to talk all things media. As always, my guest host here, James Manning, editor and publisher of Mediaweek, is here with us. More from James in just a moment. In particular, we're going to discuss some of the major news stories of the week. But before that, in 2005, Pedestrian TV founders Chris Wirasinha and Oscar Martin wanted to change the publishing game by creating a platform that would resonate with young Aussies in an entirely new way. Well, they succeeded well beyond their initial plan and now look after Australia's biggest youth news website. Well, Chris Wirasinha, I'm pleased to say, joins us now to talk about the digital publishing marketplace. Chris, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
How ambitious were the initial plans?
The initial plans were very ambitious. I think if you talk to any startup founder, they want to take over the world. The initial plans were massive. So I think now when we look back at things, we go, oh, we've done fairly well, but maybe not quite as well as we initially, thought. I think we thought we would have, kind of very much a kind of global business that had headquarters in sort of, 16 countries and was, like the not just the #1 like youth website in, Australia, but potentially in the world. So, look, I won't say that we failed. I think we did okay. Still going, and we've had some great success, and we've had a fun time building a team. But when we started the business, I was 21 and my business partner was 22, and you have to go for it, right? Like you have to kind of have big dreams at that age. So yeah,
nice.
Makes me feel like I need to ask you then, is there still a chance would you like to do something overseas? Did you ever sort of explore that option?
We never did. Like we looked at it, but like we'd seen a lot of young kind of media companies, I think, try to go overseas before they were ready. When you look at media from a global perspective, like the US is especially with digital media, it's a very sophisticated, kind of well-established market, and it's not a cheap market to break into. I mean, talking to people who have had media products in the US, there's sort of like 8 major markets that you need to have a presence in, kind of. Like if you look at a Sydney or Melbourne, like 4 million people, like there's lots of those cities at that scale, over in the US. So that was something, and we saw a lot of those smaller companies from Australia go over, and then what ended up happening was a lot of them would come back and their business would sort of, Australia would have really faltered. So unless you really, I think around the time that we, about 3 years ago, we did a deal with Channel 9 and we sold a, kind of chunk of the business, and that's sort of recently been consolidated. But probably around that time, we had the choice to go, well, do we either sort of stay in Australia and really kind of focus on local growth, or do we, potentially go and try to raise venture capital and, sort of roll the dice again? And, maybe it's the less sexy option, but we chose to kind of, stay in Australia. And I think, even within what we're doing in Australia, we can be 6, 7, 8 times what we are now. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting growth opportunities. And
look, just staying with looking back, I mean, there's no doubt the success you have had since starting in 2005. Are there any particular standout moments, decisions, that for you were milestones at least that you look back on?
So there was definitely a few. I mean, for people who aren't familiar, because I'm not sure. I think the audience that's watching Your Money at 2:30 p.m. in an afternoon is maybe not the best cross section with a pedestrian audience. I'm not sure, but so for any pedestrian kind of readers out there, hi, and for anyone who's sitting here going, what on earth are they talking about? The business sort of started as a DVD magazine, which was a free sort of DVD that got people would pick up in kind of retail stores, universities, cafes, and it was kind of filled with 60 minutes of content, which was kind of youth culture. So music festivals and fashion week, and kind of touring bands and rap artists and DJs and things like that. And we would cut that together, and it would be sort of like a magazine style TV show. And then after a couple of years, we launched the website, and that was probably a big, that was definitely a big shift for us. Launching the website was a really pinnacle decision, and one of those things that really sort of shaped what the business would be, because the website that we launched around 2007, 2008, it's gone through lots of redesigns, but the fundamental concept of it is very similar to what we're doing now.
Did you make any bad calls? I mean, because it seems like it's just a wonderful success story, but I'm always interested, were there things that you went, gee whiz, we got away with that?
There's very... I don't know if it's just my personal viewpoint on things. I think I like to I'm a bit kind of glass half full, sort of, so even those things that maybe if we look back and said, oh, that wasn't the right call to say hire that person, or to do this, or to, or we were a bit late to that, it's all just part of the journey. I do think, I mean, this is very nitty gritty, but for anyone out there setting up a business, we went up and we said, okay, well, you need to set up a business. There needs to be a PTY limited company, so we'll go and set that up and we'll get an ABN and done. But then, after like when the business started to sort of show some early signs of success, we had like a couple of accountants be like, why did you set it up like that? And we were like, we went on the website and just, that's what you do, isn't it? No, you need to have a trust and a unit trust, and you should have asset protection here and this. And so, yeah, so that cost us a bit of money, because like when you transfer, even if you're just transferring assets to yourself, you have to pay tax on it. And so that was probably like the one thing that I kind of would look back on and go, maybe we'll do that differently. But in terms of the business, we've had a really great kind of growth story. We've worked very hard. We've built a fantastic team. We've probably had a bit of luck go in our favour as well. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go back and kind of rewrite any part of the story.
Is the youth market hard? I mean, a lot of people talk about, rightly or wrongly, the fickle nature, if you like. They talk about millennials or whatever the next sort of generation coming through is. Is it? And how do you approach that? By being able to stay relevant, being able to stay a top destination of choice.
I think the youth market is hard if it's a business that is not run by young people. So, So the youth market's really easy when you're in your 20s or even your early 30s, and you're kind of part of that audience, and you're going to the gigs and the you're part of that world. And so when the product that we created when we were in our early 20s was very much that. And now as I'm 35 now, so I'm starting to maybe move away from that world somewhat, but everyone in our team is that's what they're doing, and that's how we kind of what we hire for. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's hard, and in some ways, especially being a digital product, it was probably easier, because as opposed to trying to bring a 50, 60-year-old to come and read your content online, that's where our audience was. And so all we had to do was just be where they were. So, initially that was on our website, and then that became on our website and, say, in MySpace, and then that MySpace turned into Facebook, and then that turned into Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat, and Instagram, and, YouTube. And, so now that's probably one of the challenges now is probably the fragmented nature of the audience and the amount of different channels that you really should kind of be across, and sort of where you allocate your resources.
Did you have any challenges with competitors along the way? 'Cause digital media seems to be a little bit easier to copy maybe than old media. Say if you go and copy a website or something, did that sort of raise its head?
I think in some ways we were that business. Like, there's definitely businesses that were much larger than us in the market when we started out, and we were always the underdog, and we were always the one that had like a third of the traffic, and we had to sort of build our numbers up and build up our kind of commercial and acumen, and we were always competing against people that were bigger than us, and even now we're competing against even like holding companies like a Nine or a like News or a Fairfax or all of those businesses. We're in competition with kind of eyeballs, and now we're in competition with two of the biggest companies in the world, which is like Facebook and Google. So yeah, competition's always been a factor, but I think we're still small enough that we can kind of control sort of the output, and it's how we run the business is what we kind of see as a result of that. We don't shift as much from like broader kind of industry wins.
You mentioned the Nine deal. What does that mean for you personally? Like, is it something that's locked you in there? And you mentioned 35. I mean, is the passion for pedestrian TV still there?
Yeah, so I mean, to answer both sides of that question, we did the Nine deal 3 years ago. So we sold 60% of the business to Channel 9 in 2015. I think the valuation of the company at the time was about $15.5 million. We're pretty happy with that outcome, but we still retained, so myself and my business partner Oscar, we held 40% of the shares, and then it came out in the kind of media that a couple of months ago we sold the rest of the shares, and the business had grown quite, about 6 or 7 times since that. So I think the valuation when we ultimately have sold down the rest of the shares was just shy of $100 million. So we were really happy with the outcome. It exceeded kind of our expectations, and in terms of the business, we're super pumped about where it can go, and kind of building a business that's for us it's kind of our legacy, right? We started that business when we were essentially kids, and we still love it, and we've built this team. I always kind of liken being a sort of startup founder or kind of running a business as it's like being the general manager of a sports team, and you get to pull in the people that you want to kind of build the best possible kind of crew around you. And so we don't want to we want to make sure the business is in the best possible standpoint to kind of go through its next phase, and its next phase isn't kind of being a wholly kind of founder-run business. It is about, you know, us making sure that we've got the management in place, that, you know, the business can continue to grow and scale, and we've got world-class people in there who can take on kind of, you know, all of the challenges that come their way. But we would like to, you know, kind of continue an involvement with the business, you know, kind of for years to come, because, you know, I've got 2 kids now, and they're, you know, they're 8 and they're 6, well, 9 and 6 actually, and, you know, like in 10 years' time, I'd love them to be, you know, kind of reading the Pedestrian website and, you know, things like that, and being like, hey, Dad made that, so yeah.
So that sounds like you're going to have maybe a bit of time to do some other stuff. Would you ever get involved in a startup again? And is there something for middle-aged Australia? Do you think you could, you've got something to offer?
I definitely am. You know, I think that was part of the, you know, kind of us staying on, and part of that, you know, kind of conversation with Nine was about, you know, we want to kind of see pedestrians succeed, but we also want to kind of retain some entrepreneurial freedom to do some interesting things. And I think there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, one area that I'm really passionate about is, you know, kind of how can media really unlock the value that it delivers and compete on a better footing with the likes of kind of Google and Facebook. I think that's a really interesting area. So I don't know if I would necessarily start a new kind of content-based media company, but I think things that sort of, you know, help to bolster and fund, you know, kind of journalism and great content to keep getting made is like an area that I'm really passionate about. So yeah, so watch this space.
All right.
So you've ended up sort of just in as new media, you've ended up with old media, I guess, with the Nine deal, and with the sort of their proposed merger, which isn't quite there yet, with Fairfax. Does that sort of give you maybe possibilities for the future, or does that excite you about opportunity?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's almost, I think the moves that Nine is making at the moment, like it kind of goes beyond old media. You know, the way that they're like, you know, running that business is really exciting, and the way they're incubating businesses like Stan, I think if they, you know, apply kind of what they were sort of bringing to Stan to businesses like Domain, and, you know, kind of even that sort of independence that they've let us have, they really know how to take, you know, kind of like these sort of, you know, ideas and compete with global players. Like, you know, I mean, I would be the first one to say that when I first saw, you know, kind of that period where you had Presto and Stan and Netflix up against each other, I was like, this is just going to be a bloodbath. and it, you know, and the numbers that Stan are putting up are phenomenal, and it's a fantastic business, and the content is arguably better than, you know, what's on Netflix. And I don't think there would be many commentators who would have looked back, you know, kind of and thought that they would be able to do what they have done. And I think that's, you know, testament to Stan's management, but also testament to, you know, kind of what Nine has been able to sort of bring to the table and their entrepreneurial way of looking at things. Yeah,
sure. It'd be interesting that Netflix is another company, of course, started in the DVD business, and that's
true. Yeah,
they've gone on to do rather well.
Pissed off with Blockbuster late fees. It's a great story. Chris, got to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us today. Bit of media news around. We'll cover now with James Manning. We always like an award show. The radio awards were held over the weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is the biggie of award shows too. Something like 96 awards. So
wow, that is a lot.
You've got to have your stamina. Close to 4 hours to get through that.
Too much, isn't it?
Yeah, but the good thing is
put the music up just when people keep talking too long.
And that's good though. They don't let people talk. You get up, you get your awards, you get off. So it's only the few, which can be a bit harsh, but it's only the sort of big awards right at the end, about 3 or 4, where they let people have a bit of a speak.
Kyle and Jackie O didn't turn up, from what I understand.
No, they didn't. But they were the big winners of the night, though. Apart from being there, they won their company, Australian Radio Network, ARN, took home 10 awards, and Talent, or Kyle and Jackie O, won 5 of those, people who work on that show. So it's a big part of that business. Southern Cross Austereo dominated though, because they've got that, of course, that big national network of metro and regional stations with Triple M and the Hit Network. They took about 30 of those 90 awards.
Any AM winners?
Yeah, Neil Mitchell did very well down in Melbourne. Ray Hadley won for the best on-air team, but he won for that weekend show, The Continuous Call, which has got a pretty big audience up here, I think, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, because it's very rugby league focused.
Sticking with radio, Adelaide's got a new commercial radio station.
Yeah, SEN, the Melbourne specialist sports station, is going. It actually was in Adelaide years ago. Didn't last very long. Probably wasn't very well funded, but it's going back into Adelaide. They're going to have their own dedicated Adelaide breakfast show. I think they're going to have a local drive show, but the rest of the day will be networked out of Melbourne, probably on weekends too. So they've bought a narrowcast licence over there, which lets you broadcast on the AM band. Doesn't give you a signal quite as strong as the more established AM stations, but it should be okay for most people living in Adelaide.
All right, fantastic. And let's just get to turn to television. We'll do some ratings now. This is for week 42. We'll kick off with the free-to-air racings. And the block, is that the final?
Yeah, no, it's not. There's one.
No, actually, you've still got the option this Sunday.
Weekend.
I'm a big block fan, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you've got that to come. I'm sure that'll top the chart next week. 7 News, 9 News, ABC, all there. Have you been paying attention? It's up on the chart.
Show.
Just done a deal with CBS for the format. They're going to take it worldwide perhaps and sell it into other markets so there'll be local hosts, local contestants each week.
So is this another win for is it Working Dog? Is that the name of the guys?
Yeah, it's another win for them. They had a few formats over the years which have done well on sort of syndication
Panel was
format
the first
sales.
one I remember of their...
Yep, that got
it goes all the way back to the Late Show, which I was a huge fan of.
Yep, absolutely.
So there you go. There is week 42 free to air. We'll kick over to subscription television for week 42.
Yeah, again, a mix of sport and lifestyle, if you like. There, that rugby league, Australia versus Tonga, was on both Nine and Fox Sports. Did very well for the Fox League, actually it was. And the cricket there again too. Fox Cricket still doing quite well.
And Love It or List It. That's a new series, right?
Absolutely, yep. Second season.
But the new series. It's the new season.
Absolutely, yeah. New episodes. Yeah, doing fantastic business for lifestyle. All
right, there you go. Television ratings, both free to air as well as subscription television. We're going to take a break. Big thank you to James Manning as always.